Welcome to Same Spit Different Face Podcast, where my opinions is facts, and if you don't like my opinions, you can start your own podcast, and it's free. So don't forget to click the like button, the subscribe button, and turn on that notification bell. So we are here with Jessica Reid. If you guys don't know who she is someone who has been through a very traumatic situation in her life, and basically she just wants to get her story out, and I am here to try to let her get her story out, but also ask some of the questions that has been put through the internet, and just to put a lot of stuff to rest and let people know where she's really coming from. So, Jessica, can you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
My name is Jessica Reid. I am 34 now. I have 4 children. And right now I am focusing on my nonprofit. My nonprofit is called House of Ascension, and I started that for survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. When I was 15, I was raped by Charlamagne the God. I met him through a mutual friend who I will not name. Met him at a radio station where he worked. Probably shouldn't mention the radio station either. We met at a radio station in Charleston, South Carolina. And from then on, we established what I thought was a friendship. And he was someone I thought I could trust.
Okay, so how you just said how you came in how you met him. You basically met him at the radio station. So what was that like when you first met him? Like, how did that turn out to be?
I was just basically tagging along with the person that took me there. He was a local DJ as well, and I guess he just went to the radio station to have a conversation with Charlamagne. Now, the guy who took me to the radio station did introduce us, and that was pretty much it. I sat off to the side. I didn't say much. Charlamagne did try to include me in the conversation, but I really wasn't interested. I wasn't there for that. I just really wanted to leave. But they spoke for about maybe 5-10 minutes, and then we left. There was no conversation between he and I, except for, hi, my name is Jessica, I'm Charlamagne, and that's it.
Okay, so when y'all met, was he aware of your age at the time?
He didn't know initially, like the first day we met, no, because it wasn't that type of situation. You know, I wasn't there to meet him. But eventually, as we talked, because he ended up, I don't know if he got my number from the guy who took me to the radio station. Honestly, I don't know how he got my number. I know I did not give it to him. But eventually, he ended up calling me, and then we talked over the phone a few times. And he knew my age because I told him, and he knew that I went to Somerville High School.
Okay, so how old was the guy who introduced you to, who took you up to the radio station that day, and what was y'all relationship like?
He was a friend of my best friend, Shaniqua. Shaniqua met him. That was her homie or whatever. And she introduced us, and the three of us hung out a few times. He was a cool dude. I want to say maybe he was about 20.
Okay. Now, I have another question that's really important. Now, I've done some back research on this situation just to try to figure out some things. And this next question, so, you did like a documentary that I saw it, and it was with Choke No Joke. And
Right.
Choke No Joke has personal issues with Charlamagne. So do you think that was the right platform to get your story out, as people could see it as him pushing an agenda?
I did not reach out to Choke No Joke. What happened was I was having a conversation with my younger brother, and he suggested that I take my story to Star. Because at that time, we all were trying to figure out how I could get my story out there. I didn't know who to talk to. I reached out to a few people, and they never responded. My brother suggested Star. Now, I knew Star from Star and Buckwild in the past, but I didn't know he had a podcast. and I didn't know too much about his podcast. So when my brother brought it to my attention, initially I told him no. And about a few weeks passed, and I'm still trying to figure out how to get my story out, like who's really going to hear me out. And I just hit a dead end. I didn't know who to go to, and my brother kept bringing up Stars. So I went on Stars' page on YouTube and listened to some of his podcasts, and honestly, I didn't think that it was the right avenue for me. But my brother and my mom talked me into it because I guess they felt like he was my only hope. So my brother reached out to Star's secretary, who then said that she wanted to see the paperwork to make sure everything was legit, all of the documents I had. So we sent all the documents over. She looked through them, and Star looked at them as well. And then that's when Star was like, okay, I want to have you on my show. He had me on his show. And Star was the one who thought that it would be a good idea to go ahead and do a documentary. And he introduced me to Choke. I didn't know that Choke had an issue with Charlamagne until I met Choke, and Choke did tell me that eventually. But initially, no, I didn't know he had any issues. I didn't even know who Choke was.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about him. Everyone I was introduced to, for the most part, with the exception of maybe one or two people, I was introduced to by Star, and Choke was one.
And see, and also, Star over the time has had some issues with Charlamagne as well. So if you can understand how that can probably be a conflict of interest with some people of actually taking your story seriously or hearing your story. And I also heard some people say that Choke No Joke paid you to do that interview. Now, how would you answer that?
No, he never paid me for what? Like, he never paid me anything. We paid him to do the documentary, and he was actually really nice about it because he didn't charge us what he normally would charge. We basically paid for his gas, and we paid for his hotel stay. And I think we stayed 2 days. We did the documentary over the course of the weekend. But no, Choke didn't pay me anything. He was just there to help. Now, I don't know if he had a hidden agenda. Honestly, I don't believe he did. But like I said, I wouldn't know that. As far as I know, he was there to help me. And that's all it was.
Okay. Yeah, man. That actually gives a flip to the story as far as you saying you ended up paying him to do the service for you, because a lot of the things I was seeing over the internet, people were basically just trying to say that Choke No Joke was taking this situation as an opportunity to basically like throw some slander back against Charlamagne. And I've watched a few Breakfast Club interviews, and I watched the one where Choke No Joke was on there. And then after that, they kind of fell out. They had issues before that, but it got worse after that. So I think that outlet, although I think he do have a good outlet, I think that part of it made people see it as less credible, if that makes sense to you.
No, it does. It does. And I can see why people would think that. But no, that, as far as I'm concerned, those weren't his intentions. He came at me and said he genuinely wanted to help because he believed the story. And Star reached out to him, and he reached out to me and my family. Any ulterior motive, that's on him. I can't answer that for him. But just working with him and being with him, and he's still working with me to this day behind the scenes, still trying to help me get justice. So I don't believe that there's anything deeper than him just wanting to help me.
Okay, that's good to know. Now, I was reading the comments on that documentary, and down in there, some people were saying that it appeared that your mom was forcing herself to cry. And what do you have to say to people who say something like that? And I'm sure that your mom loves you dearly.
Yeah, she loves me a lot. We have a great relationship. And we try not to pay attention to the comments. There's been a few times where I have went into the comments, and I probably shouldn't have, and got real emotional about it. I think that people are very insensitive, and I think that people should think before they speak and maybe try to put themselves in someone else's shoes. Because although my mom didn't let me go out that night, And although my mom did make a lot of mistakes as a parent, she's a human being, and we all make mistakes. I don't fault her for anything that happened that night. And I think that people just need to back off. And if you don't have anything positive to say, then you probably shouldn't say anything at all. It's already stressful enough to be going through the situation. And then to see people with negative comments, it makes it just even more stressful. So, we just try not to pay attention to the negativity. And we just want to stay on the positive side of it.
Yeah, that's one thing you really have to just think about is when you put your story out, what you should put your story out, you should be able to speak whatever you feel is the truth and whatever happened to you. But you also have to understand that a lot of people are going to give their opinion on the situation, and they're not going to be tactful, and they're not going to be understanding. And some people can just see this as you trying to come up, or you trying to get some type of celebrity or some type of voice off of a situation that has basically been decided. So that can happen in certain situations. And to lead to my next question, what is the ultimate goal you wish to accomplish by getting your story out, and do you think your story can help others?
Well, initially what I wanted to do is I wanted to have the case reopened. But we ended up finding out that was not possible because of the plea deal he took. We found out once he took that plea, he could not be recharged or retried for that same crime. Because what I wanted to do is I wanted to have the case reopened. I wanted to have him tried again. And I wanted him to, go to jail and serve time for what happened. And that's not possible. So at this point, I just want my story to be heard. I want people to know the truth about who he is. He's a fraud. He's saying a lot of things that aren't true. I know that he is connected with a lot of organizations, and I found out later on that he was also connected with the Me Too organization, which I find very, very hard to believe. But I just want to get my story out there. I wanted people to know the truth about what happened. I was never able to tell my side of the story. I know that he's written about me in his book. I know that he did a few interviews about me where he twisted the whole story and made it seem like I was just some, crazy girl at a party getting drunk and high, when that is so far from the truth. That's not even who I was and not even who I am to this day. So I wanted my side to be heard. I wanted the truth to be put out there. And I also wanted to just help other people who are in my situation. And that's also why I started the nonprofit, because I feel like my story can help others. And I feel like me coming out to give someone else the courage to come out as well.
Okay. Did DNA clear him of the alleged rape, or how did the charges go with that?
What happened with that was he had to give a sample. But when I went in and I had my exam, there was no DNA found in me at all. So the sample that he gave, they had nothing to compare that to, because they could find no DNA within me at all. So when people say that he was cleared of DNA, or he says he was cleared of DNA, that's not true. If you take a sample, or you give a sample, and they're trying to find a sample in me, a sample of semen, and there's nothing in me, then they have nothing to compare your sample to say if you are the actual one who committed the rape. So therefore, they needed me to testify in court that he was the one that raped me. And without my testimony, nothing could stick.
Okay.
So, yeah. So I don't know if a condom was used that prevented, any semen being left behind, which I'm thinking that's probably what it was. But no, he definitely was not cleared through DNA. And I have evidence that states that, and it's all over the internet. But for some reason, people are they're overlooking that part.
So, what is your mental state since the alleged rape? Like, how has life been for you? And having 4 kids, having a relationship with somebody, continuing to build throughout your life. I'm sure at 15, that's very traumatic. So, how has life been for you mentally?
I came a long way. I know that after everything happened, we ended up moving to Virginia, and I lived there for like 16 years. And probably half of that time, I don't even think I thought about what happened. I kind of suppressed it. I didn't think about it. I didn't want to think about it. I didn't talk about it until I got older. Like maybe in my late 20s is when everything started to resurface. And I started going through a period of depression, severe depression. I started going through a period of suicide. I went through a lot with my kid's father because of it, emotionally as well as physically. I suffered a lot of physical trauma. I ended up having to go to a physical therapist because of what happened. And even to this day, I still suffer with it. I think it's something I'm probably gonna suffer with for the rest of my life. But I'm at a point where I can handle it a lot better than I used to be able to handle it because I have things that I do. You know, I meditate and I pray a lot, so that helps me. And I used to take medication. They had me on Zoloft and a few other medications because I was suffering from insomnia. I couldn't sleep at night. So I was on medication for a while, but I didn't like the way it made me feel. So I got off the medication and I started doing my own thing to kind of help me get through it. And that's when I started meditation and yoga and started eating better and just doing certain things to just make me feel better and keep my spirits high. Also, I go to counseling. I've been going to counseling for a couple of years now, but it's not typical counseling. It's more spiritual counseling. But like I said, I'm in a better space than I was before. But it's still difficult. I still have my days, especially when I hear him on the radio or when I see him on TV. You know, he's pretty much everywhere now. You know, when I see him in Barnes & Noble, because I like to read a lot, and I go to Barnes & Noble a lot to pick up books, and his books are in there. So, you know, stuff like that bothers me, but I'm not where I used to be. I've grown a lot.
You said you go to physical therapy. Like, what type of physical therapy helps you with your mental health? I've never heard of that part of it. What is that about?
It's not for my mental. It's for the trauma that I experienced because of the rape.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's vaginal therapy.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I apologize. I didn't mean to probe in that, but I know a lot of people will listen to this and be like, "Wait, she go to physical therapy for that? What's that about?"
Right.
So we don't have to get any deeper into that. I understand where you're going with that. So basically, so how has it been for you since you spoke out against him? Because like you say, he is everywhere. So do you feel like you not being taken serious or like you being silenced by the industry because he is who he became?
Yeah, most definitely. I don't think that anyone has. I don't think anyone has really given me the opportunity to tell my side of the story. There have been a few bloggers, a few YouTubers, and a couple of magazines. I think not magazines, but a couple of online sources. The Blast was one of them, and I had a few other people reach out to me. But overall, the people who I feel like could really, really help me and really get my story heard that I reached out to, they did not respond to me. I reached out to Me Too. They would not respond. I reached out to a few other people who I'm not going to name who did not respond, and I feel like it's because of who he is and because of his status in the industry. And I also feel like because of who he is, he's able to control the narrative and he's able to speak because he has such a huge platform. So he can go on the radio station and say whatever he wants to say, and people are going to hear that and they're going to believe that because they haven't really heard my side yet.
Now, let me ask you another question that's super relevant. Do you feel like part of the reason people aren't trying to hear you because he has basically been charged for whatever he was charged for I think it was a misdemeanor to delinquent of a minor or something like that? Do you think that's enough? And he also says that he's been cleared by DNA evidence. Do you think that's another reason why people have a hard time actually trying to hear you out or give you a platform?
I mean, it could be, but you have to understand that there's always two sides to the story. You know, he's not going to come out and say, yes, I did rape her. I mean, why would he? He would lose everything he has. He's not going to come out and be honest about it. So for people to be that naive to just believe what he's saying and not say, okay, well, let me go ahead and hear her out because, you know, she may be telling the truth. There may be more to the story than what he's saying. For people to actually just take what he's saying and believe it, I think it's very ignorant.
I can understand where you're coming from. I see both sides from the standpoint of if you are somebody who's already working with him and he spoke on it and he appeared to be candid about it, he appeared to be sincere, and he's also has the paperwork saying that this has been exonerated and this has happened, you can kind of see where if this is somebody you've already been working with and you feel you know him pretty well, you can say, okay, well, this isn't what we think it is. It's nothing left to check into. He spoke to us. He's done this. He's done that. So I can see both sides. And I do feel like you should be able to get your story out and your side. Like you say, it is two sides to the story. And that's why we're here. So the next thing, so you were 15 when you guys met. Did your mom know his age? And if she didn't, why didn't she ask? The reason I'm asking is because a lot of people would say your mom is just as much responsible for the situation as he is, even though she didn't physically participate in the alleged rape. She didn't vet the process to maybe keep you away from somebody who was older and could have been a possible predator.
I don't believe my mom knew his age. I don't even think I knew I didn't know he was 20, whatever. I think he was 23 at the time. I didn't find that out until recently. I didn't know he was that old. My mom most definitely didn't know if I didn't know. My mom met him on several occasions. He came by my house a few times. He picked me and my friend up and took us out. So my mom, she knew him, and I guess she trusted him the same way I did. She did not know his age, no, but she knew him. Like I said, she met him. He came by the house, and she was just someone who she thought she could trust, and I thought I could trust as well. And as far as people saying that she's just as responsible, I think that's crazy. I don't think that you allow your child to go off with someone who you feel like you can trust, and you thinking that something negative or something bad is going to happen to them. My mom did not let me leave the house that day thinking, okay, something's going to happen to my daughter. I'm pretty sure that she didn't think that, and I sure didn't think that either. Like I said, he was someone who I looked at as a brother.
Yep.
So him doing that to me was not even something on my mind at that time. I honestly thought I was going to, and the thing is, too, is people are saying that this was the party was for his cousin or something like that. But the way he related to me was that I was going to his birthday party. The party was supposed to be his birthday party, and that's the only reason I went, because initially I wasn't going to go. But he said it was his birthday party. He said, you're like my sister. You have to be there. And I said, okay, I'll go. And
so,
that's the only reason.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to let you finish. You said that was the only reason?
Right. That was the only reason I went. So when I talked to my mom about going, I said, okay, Charlamagne's having a party for his birthday, and I want to know if I can go. And she told me that was fine, you know, because she knew him, and, well, she thought she knew him, and I thought I knew him, and it was okay.
Okay. So one thing that I'm thinking about, and as him being a radio personality, and this obviously being back in the day when they had like flyers and everything that they was passed out and stuff like that, do you think that it should have been a red flag to you, or it should have been weird to you that he wasn't passing out flyers saying he was having a birthday party, or that he wasn't promoting his birthday party on the radio, or he wasn't trying to make money off of that party? by him being on the radio at the time? Like in retrospect or in hindsight, when you look back and think about it, do you think that was something you overlooked?
No, I don't. I don't think so, because it wasn't that type of party. It was a party for just friends and family. It wasn't anything that was going to be over the top and big that he had to promote. It wasn't that type of event. It was supposed to be a party for friends and family, people that he was close to, that were going to some type of beach house or something. It was supposed to be like a beach party. That's what it was supposed to be. It wasn't this big, extravagant event. So, no.
Okay, so by the town being so small, your mom, she never knew he was a radio personality, or like once you guys start hanging together, and by the way you say y'all were brother and sister, so by that time she never inquired what he did for a living?
I honestly, I don't remember her asking me what he did for a living. And I mean, Z93 was like a hip hop station. My mom did not listen to hip hop, so
Okay.
my mom wouldn't have known him from that.
That makes a lot of sense. I can understand that, especially with the age different and,
Right.
her being much older. She might be into her dusties, especially. And also
Right.
to add context to people who not really understanding this, she was 15 at the time, and this was like how many years ago? Maybe like 20, 30 years ago?
It's about 18 years ago.
Okay, so about 18 years ago. So, yeah, the context of how she probably would have been listening to some type of dusty station like a Tom Joyner or something at that time.
Right. Or maybe even jazz. Yes, she definitely is not into hip hop and the music that station played at that time. No.
Okay, so something else that I also was seeing, and I know we have a culture where we say people victim blame now, and a lot of the comments I seen was people were saying you were probably sexually active before the rape and alleged rape. I always have to say that, don't want to get sued. And
Right.
some people want to paint the narrative of you being a fast little girl trying to be grown. What would you say about that?
Whether I was sexually active before or whether I was not sexually active before does not give someone the right to take advantage of me.
Facts.
Okay? It does not give someone the right to mislead me or to manipulate me or to drug me and rape me.
That is 100% true. I noticed in the documentary you got emotional while describing that day. Like, what are your feelings about that now? Like, when you think about the documentary and just you going back to that apartment complex and you being in that spot where these things happened or whatever.
Yeah, it's still tough. I have not watched the documentary in its entirety. I probably saw maybe about 5 or 10 minutes of it. Eventually, maybe I will get to the point where I can watch the whole thing, but I have not watched it. And describing what happened to me that day is still very difficult. That is the first time that I've had to do that, besides being in the counseling setting. That is the first time I had to do that, and I haven't done that since.
Okay. In Charlamagne's book, he says someone else raped you and used his name. Is that possible? Are you 100% sure he was one of the alleged rapists?
I'm 1,000% sure. I saw Charlamagne.
So you saw him?
No, yeah, I saw Charlamagne. There's no denying that Charlamagne was the one that raped me. Now, I was definitely assaulted by 3 other men, but Charlamagne is the one that penetrated me, that raped me, yes.
Wow. So you were assaulted by 3 other men plus Charlamagne, which would be a total of 4.
Right.
Wow.
And I think I read online that there was some type of train ran on me. That's not true. No, that's not true. I was raped by Charlamagne, and 3 of his friends, I don't know who the hell those people were, but 3 of the people who were at the party assaulted me. 2 in a bathroom and 1 in the bedroom.
Okay. Were you under the influence of any drugs or alcohol? And if so, how can you be 1,000% sure?
I had, I don't know what drink he gave me. But I took maybe a few sips of the drink. I didn't even drink the whole thing. But I know that after I drank what I did drink, when I went to stand up and go to the bathroom, because I started feeling really fuzzy. So when I stood up to go to the bathroom, I collapsed to the floor because my limbs felt weak. Okay? Mm-hmm. Now, I could still see everything. I could hear everything. I was not to a point where I was blacked out. Okay? I knew what was going on around me. I just couldn't move.
Okay. So you had like that limp body feeling where basically all your sensories was there. You can see everything. You could pay attention. You can hear. You can speak, but you couldn't move.
I could not move. I couldn't defend myself. I couldn't do anything besides lay there. And then I was carried up the stairs because I kept saying I had to go to the bathroom. And I was carried up the stairs by the two guys that assaulted me. And when I went back and looked through the statement I wrote for the police, I think I identified the two guys as Larry and Boo. But like I said, those weren't my friends. I don't know who those men were, but their names were Larry and Boo.
So I'm listening to you when you say you had to go back through the statement to remember those guys' name. So right. you never saw them before that night. You never, because if they were Charlamagne friends, most people would think that he hung out with them and he was around town with them or something like that. So you never, even if you didn't know them by name, you never saw them before that night?
I never saw those guys. Now, when we hung out, the few times we hung out, he brought his cousin. I think his cousin's name was Kenta Palmer or something like that. Now, I knew him, but I didn't know those other guys. There was a few guys there and a couple of females, and I didn't know any of those people.
Yeah. Now, the guy you just mentioned, actually, in his book, he says that's who party it was that night.
Right, yeah, and that's what I mentioned earlier, that he was saying it was a party for his cousin, and a few people online were saying the same thing. But the way he sold it to me was that it was his birthday party. Now, this all happened in June. Now, if you go look it up, his birthday is in June. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
If I knew I was going to a party for his cousin, I would not have went.
Okay.
Blank period. I wouldn't have went.
So, I'm going to jump back to the Choke No Joke documentary again. I heard you say you're a 15-year-old being pressured to drink by adults, but some people will ask, what were you doing running with an adult crowd at 15?
Like I said, I didn't know he was 22 or 23. I don't even think he told me his age. I just assumed that he was maybe like 19 or something because the Rico guy, he was about 19, 20. I didn't know he was 23. And honestly, I can't tell you why I was hanging out with older people, but most of my friends at that time were older than me. I don't think that that matters. I mean, that's besides the point.
Yeah, I think it is besides the point, but I think also it adds context to the situation a little bit. Like, so when I say it adds context to the situation, if you're known to hang with older people, like, let's just put it like this. Let's just say you're in high school, right? And you're a 14-year-old freshman, but let's just say you're good enough to play varsity basketball. On that team, you'll have 17, 18-year-olds, and 18-year-olds may hang with 19 and 20-year-olds. So that's the context of the situation. In no way am I saying because you're a child hanging with adults that anything should have happened to you, but it's a question that I'm commonly seeing people ask, and I know you've been trying to get your story out, and in order for me to make sure that you get the best story out, I have to ask the tough questions. And I feel like when I watch the Choke No Joke documentary, I feel like you do a great job of getting your story out. But I also think so many negative comments are so many negative people are in the comment because it's no context to your story. It's just you telling your part, and there's nobody saying, well, what about this? Well, what happened with that?
I mean, it was common. It was very common to hang out with older people. You know what I'm saying? All of my friends, we all hung out with older people, and that's just what it was. You know, I can't give any other explanation besides that's just what it was. We just hung out with older people. You know, 15, 16, we hung out with 17, 18, 19-year-olds, and I really can't say anything more to it than just that. That's all it was. We just hung out with older people. You know, I hung out with girls who were 18-year-olds, who drove, who took me out. We hung out, went to the mall, and that's just what it was. That's just what we did. We hung out with older people.
Okay.
And I really can't give an explanation. That's just what it was.
All right. That's definitely your answer.
But in me hanging out with older people, I always carried myself well. It wasn't me being a fast little girl, being up in guys' faces and wanting to hang out and just wanting to be up under men. It wasn't that. Like I said, we had a friendship. There was nothing sexual about our relationship. Okay? It was strictly platonic. So even though there was an age difference, it was just a friendship. It was just me hanging out. I had a lot of older friends, and it was only a friendship. That's it. It wasn't nothing deep. It wasn't anything extra. It wasn't nothing more to it. They were just all friends.
Yeah. So I did hear you mention the guys Larry and Boo. What exactly was their involvement, and are you pursuing actions against them as well as Charlamagne, or is the Charlamagne thing because it was rape and not so much assault, alleged rape and not so much assault, and you want to get your story out?
No, I've tried to pursue charges against everyone who was involved. But the issue with those two is I don't know who they are. So when I went down to Moncks Corner Sheriff's Department months ago to try to press charges on these men, and I'm coming at the sheriff and telling him, okay, I want to pursue charges. All I have is a nickname or a street name. Then he's telling me that I don't have enough. You know what I mean? I don't have a first name. I don't have a last name. I don't know anything about these men besides their street name, Larry and Boo. And as a result, there's nothing they can do for me with that information.
So have you done anything deeper to maybe try to dig into finding their names? I know it was other people at the party. You may have not known all of them. I do remember where you were saying one of your girlfriends, she was there with you, and she's actually the one who came up to the room and actually saw you guys. Have you guys tried to do any of your own detective work to maybe possibly get a lead on these two guys? Because for some people, they may say, okay, why isn't she going as hard at these two guys as she may be going at Charlamagne? So how would you answer that?
I don't know who they are. Like, if I saw them today, I couldn't even say, okay, these are the two guys that assaulted me. For one, this was 18 years ago, okay? I didn't know these men then. I don't know them now. I don't know how they look. I don't know their whereabouts. I don't know first and last names. I don't know family members. I don't know anything about these men.
Okay. Well, yeah.
I have nothing to go off on. Nothing besides a nickname. Nothing.
So if you saw them today, you wouldn't even know what they looked like?
I would not know what they look like, no.
And that would be because you didn't have a previous relationship with them?
Yeah, I did not know them prior to the incident. So I don't know, I wouldn't know how they look. All I know is one of the guys were dark skinned and slim, and the other guy, he was short, light skinned and chubby, and that's all I know. As far as details, you know, their face, their things like that, I have no idea.
Okay. So doing any of this assault to the other two guys or to Charlamagne, did you say stop, no, get off? Was it any way that they could have perceived what you were doing as being consensual?
No, there's no way I could have. I mean, I couldn't fight because I was really weak. But I mean, if you go back and listen to the documentary, or if you go back and look at the documents, there was a lot of yelling and screaming going on. You know what I mean? I told him no. I told him to stop. I told him to leave me alone. You know, I told him when the guys were assaulting me in the bathroom, I told them, get out, you know, but they kept doing what they were doing. So they knew that I didn't want to participate. They knew that I didn't want them there. They knew I didn't want to be touched the way they were touching me. So it was not consensual at all. Not at all. And they knew that.
Now, when you speak of the guys in the bathroom again, I did see your friend speaking on the interview with Star, and she basically said that she heard you yelling and she came upstairs. No one else in the party heard you yelling, or no one else tried to come to your help? No one else tried to step in and see what was going on? She was the only one who heard you yelling?
Nobody came upstairs until the very end. And that's when Charlamagne ran out the room. Nobody else came up there until at that point. And I think pretty much the whole party came upstairs at that point.
Okay. So everyone did basically come for the aftermath of the situation. So anybody who was there would know this part of the story, that even if they didn't see the assault or the alleged rape, they would be able to corroborate that they did come up there at the end for some screaming and yelling.
Most definitely. Yeah.
Okay, so I've also seen a few times where it's been said that some of the things you seem to be 100% certain on, and some of the things you appear to be shaky on, as if you're not 100% sure what happened in certain instances. What would you say about that part of it?
So what part am I unsure about?
Well, it's just like, so when I was reading down in the comments, they were saying that it was like just discrepancies in how you were presenting it through the documentary in some parts, and even they were saying it was like some discrepancies between the way your mom was saying it and the way you were saying it, and also with your friend. Because when he did the documentary, at least the one I saw, it was chopped together where it was pieces where your friend was actually speaking and kind of speaking on the same points of the story you were speaking on, but she was giving kind of a different perspective of what you were saying.
Now, Malika was not in the documentary.
It was no on the end. Yes, it's one online where the Star interview and your interview with Choke No Joke is merged together, where she's basically speaking. I'll send you the link to that after this so you can watch it. But they basically chopped it up where she was speaking on the same parts that you were speaking on at the same time. It's about an hour and something long. But I mean, the whole point of the question is, what would you say to people who feel like that, who feel like some parts you say you're 100% sure, but then on other parts you may not seem so sure? Even if we just speak of the part where you said you wouldn't remember the guys who you saw from the bathroom, how would you feel about people saying that?
I don't really think I understand. How would I feel about people saying that I don't remember who the guys were?
Yes, like because in one instance you would say I'm 100% that I saw Charlamagne, but then in the other instance you would say you're not 100% sure how the guys looked in the restroom. Like, what would you say to people who would question that? Like, they would basically, like, let's just say if a person say, if you didn't know 100% who those guys was who assaulted you, how can you be 100% sure that you know this guy face?
I don't understand. I mean, it doesn't make sense. How could you compare me knowing Charlamagne for months, okay, me knowing him, okay, for months, and me being able to pick him apart from two or three people who I've never seen in my life? I don't understand how you can even compare the two. I never saw those men before in my life.
Okay.
Okay, never. I never saw them before the incident or after the incident. All I know is what happened that night. And all I remember is pretty much silhouettes of them. I don't know details of their face. I really don't. And I don't know how to explain that. I just don't know details of their face. But I think that it doesn't make sense to compare me saying I don't know details of these three men's faces because I don't know who they are, period, compared to me saying I know Charlamagne was on me because I saw him walk in the bedroom because I know Charlamagne.
Right.
Okay? No way I can mistake anybody else for him because I know Charlamagne's face. You understand what I'm saying?
You just know sometime in traumatic situations, and I actually did take some time to, do some research because not only did I want to make sure that I gave an interview that allowed you to get your story out, but I also wanted to make sure that I was sensitive to the situation and also that I was informed. So I had seen in some of the research that I was doing that a lot of victims of not just rape, but traumatic situations, like they remember those situations as if they were yesterday, and they remember maybe if it was another victim with them when they got into a mass shooting, they would remember the faces and the smell and the touch of all the victims. So that's just something that I was, just another question that I was coming across when, like I say, and you said, when you go down on those comments, you hear and you see so many things being said by people that kind of make people feel like, oh, well, maybe it's a hole in her story. Why didn't she say anything about this person? Or why isn't she pursuing that person? So as I've stated before, I want to ask some of those tougher questions so people can't just say, you got with me and you're pushing an agenda. Like, okay, you want to know about this? She answered that. Does that make sense?
It does. It makes a lot of sense, yes.
Has Charlamagne reached out to you or have you spoken to him since the events, via email, text, or have he sent a message third person since the night of the incident in the party?
No, I have not spoke to him, saw him since that night. Even to this, we have not had any communication with each other whatsoever.
And y'all were a relationship where it was brother and sister, and he hasn't reached out to you at all?
No, he hasn't reached out to me at all.
Okay. And he knew your mom, and he haven't reached out to you at all just to make sure you were okay?
I was okay. No, he didn't.
So, okay, so, I've heard you say he's responsible for what happened to you. Do you feel like he's responsible for what happened to you because he invited you to the party, or because he knew all these people and he didn't protect you?
I feel like he's responsible because I feel like everything that happened that night was premeditated. I feel like, first of all, he invited me to the party. Okay? I went to the party with him, Malika and I. He gave me the drinks. You understand? He knew the guys were at the party. The guys took me upstairs. I don't know if he knew what went on in that bathroom. I don't know if he spoke about it with those other guys. That I can't say. But I do know that after they did what they did, he came in the room and he raped me. So, yeah, he's 100% responsible, for sure. He took me to the party. He gave me the drink. I feel like everything that happened that night was a setup.
So, in closing, if he was to hear this interview and it was like you were able to speak to him this one time, what would you say to him?
Oh, wow. I don't even know. I really don't know what I would say to him. And that's something that I contemplated and I sat and thought about over the years, if I could say anything to him. I guess I want to know why.
Okay.
I guess I want to know why. Because, like I said, he was someone who I trusted and someone who came off as someone who cared about me and had my back and had my best interest. You know what I'm saying? I would have never ever thought that he would have done that to me. Ever.
Wow.
So my thing is, like, why?
Yeah, That would be a good question to ask. Why? And maybe from there, y'all can build on a stronger conversation and maybe come to a realization of everything that allegedly took place that night. So I want to thank you for coming and doing this interview with me. Once I heard the story, I really felt like your story isn't being taken as serious because it was put out by people who don't like Charlamagne. And when you do work with somebody who doesn't like somebody, it can seem agenda based. So I think that was one of the things that I really looked at. And I've been doing this, and not only do I do this, but I pay attention to a lot of things that go on to the culture as far as like media, radio, the sports aspect of it, the injustice part of it. So I just knew when I looked at your story and I looked at how long it had been up, I was like, wow, this is crazy. This story doesn't have more views. And I instantly, once I figured out who put it up, I was like, that's why they're not taking the story serious. I think, one, because of who did it, but two, because it's just you telling your story. So I do want to say I appreciate you sitting down and letting me ask you some of the tougher questions, because I know some of these questions can possibly come off as if I'm asking you from a standpoint of, oh, I don't believe you. But for me, I'm not here to say he did what he did, or I'm not here to say you're lying. I'm here to ask questions that kind of fill in some of those gaps where people can be able to say, now we have a full spectrum of the question of the situation. We didn't hear her just sit down and say what she want to say, but she got asked some of those tough questions. Now we can make a educated decision on what we think happened, and we can look at this without feeling like the interviewer is biased to her situation, because he did ask her things that may be a little uncomfortable or may make her feel like he's trying to push some of the blame towards her or her mom, which I'm not.
And I appreciate that, and I just want to reiterate the situation with choosing Star and doing the documentary with Hope. Like I said before, I had no idea of the relationship that they had with Charlamagne. I had no idea. It just so happened that my brother is a big fan of Star. He's been following him since Star and Buck Wild, and he thought it would be a good platform for me to go on and tell my story. And honestly, like I said, we were pretty desperate because nobody would help us. Nobody would let me speak. Everyone that I reached out to ignored me. I even reached out to TMZ. They ignored me as well. So we were kind of desperate, and at the end of the day, we figured, okay, this is probably the only opportunity we're going to get to tell my story, and so we took it.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that too. Like you say, coming from a standpoint of just being desperate and just wanting to be heard and want to get your story out, and you feel like you've been wronged by someone. And if you feel like you've been wronged by someone, I can understand what it do to you mentally, just from the standpoint of knowing what this person done. But then you turn on the radio to hear your favorite song and you hear this person's voice. You hop on the internet, you see this person. You see this person talking about the Me Too movement. You see this person on TV. And that in itself can be another aspect that could mentally drain you and put you in a mindset of, like you say, where you were suicidal at one point. So I definitely understand where you're coming from. And I'm going to always say this, I'm not here to point blame and I'm not here to take sides, but I'm here to give you that fair shot to say what needs to be said and have people to possibly say, you know what, maybe we should give her another listen. Maybe she's answered these questions the same as when she was just sitting there telling them herself. Yeah, so I appreciate you coming out, and shout out your nonprofit organization again for me, please.
Oh, it's House of Ascension. House of Ascension. HOUSEOFASCENSION. House of Ascension. Instagram is Justice, the number 4, Closure. Justice for Closure.
Stay in touch, and we'll try to do a follow-up to just see if things have changed for you, maybe within like 6 months, 3 months. But during the time, I'll definitely stay in touch with you. I appreciate you coming on. Peace.
Okay. Thank you so much for the opportunity.